Guys, Judy Fine here. Today I want to share with you some tales of woe about my last musical project and turn my possibly pathetic story into a list of red flags that I want you to keep in mind when you're looking for or even already working with other musicians. So stick around and check it out. So, being in a band or finding bandmates is very similar to dating in that you put a lot of hope into it and there's a honeymoon period. And when a project is new, you're like, maybe this band is the one. And sometimes there are red flags that you ignore because you have hope for a different outcome than what you're seeing at that moment or what that red flag might be representing. So that happens all the time, and it happened to me in this last project of mine. I ignored a lot of red flags, even the ones I noticed them, but I decided to not make any decisions based on them, and that was my mistake, really. The first and most important red flag to look at initially is, do the goals of this other person or these other people genuinely match my goals? Now, in the case of this last project of mine, the band was a bar band that did a lot of classic rock, and that didn't match my goals. Neither of those things, classic rock and bar band gigs, did not match my goals. But when I called the number on the Craigslist ad and I talked to the band leader. He sold me a story about where the band wanted to go. They wanted to do country club gigs, which is what I want to do, and they wanted to add certain R&B songs and certain kinds of songs that you need to add if you're going to do country club gigs. Country clubs don't want classic rock. So right off the bat, I knew the band itself wasn't a good match for me, but I chose to believe the direction that this person told me the band wanted to go. So I'm going to give myself a little bit of slack for that. And at the same time, you should recognize what is real as opposed to what they say they want to be real, because in the dating world, we call this dating potential, right? You can date potential for your whole life and never have potential realized. So you want to be clear that you have the same goals. Now, I'm not saying they have to like all the songs that you like and you have to do all the songs that they like. Sometimes there's compromise on song choices, but the general goal should be the same. Don't compromise your goals. The second red flag you want to always make sure you pay attention to is if you see any signs of a lack of integrity or character. Now, I'm not saying you have to immediately decide that this band is not going to work for you, but you need to store that information away and don't let too many signs of a lack of integrity rack up. You got to just walk away from a project that lacks integrity. As an example, this last project, when the first time I spoke to the band leader, he told me that he was looking for a new singer behind the singer's back, behind the singer they already had, behind her back. This is a lack of integrity. It's a lack of a lot of things. But right off the bat, I should have recognized something's up here. And I mostly didn't. And that's because I had this idea that it was kind of a fluke, and they were afraid that like maybe she would explode if they said they had problems with her in the band and she wouldn't do the gigs that they already had on the books and they didn't want to cancel gigs, whatever. But in hindsight, that is still a serious lack of integrity. You should be communicating with your bandmates and trying to work something out, and you should be able to do these things amicably. If you're not a good match, then you're not a good match. It shouldn't have to end in a huge brawl. So that he should have been able to discuss this with his singer, but he chose to do it behind her back. And that was my first clue that this person and this band culture lacked integrity. Now, the lack of integrity didn't end there. So the first rehearsal I went to, the bass player wasn't available. He was out of town. They had a stand-in for the next gig. And so the stand-in came into the rehearsal that I went to. The band leader was having conversations with the stand-in about taking the bass player's place. Now, at this point, I didn't even know the bass player's name. I was brand new. For all I knew, he was planning to leave. But later, when I knew that that was not the case, and I got to know him, and frankly, I really liked him, we became friends. I should have added that, I should have considered that. This is another sign of a serious lack of integrity and a lack of professionalism. As if that wasn't enough, we hired a new guitarist, and this guy was a really nice guy, and he worked hard to prepare 3 sets of music for the first gig that he played with us. And a couple of days before the gig, I found out that the band leader had secretly decided to start rehearsing another guitarist behind the new guitarist's back. Now, I went to this gig, this new guitarist's first gig, and I knew that the other guys had rehearsed with another guitarist behind this guy's back because they were thinking that maybe they were going to like this other guitarist more. And I had to talk to this guy. At the time, I knew, like, this feels horrible. I know that there's conniving going on behind this guy's back, and I'm just smiling and pretending it's not happening. This is something I am so unhappy with myself about going along with. This is not the person I want to be or the band member that I want to be. I'm a loyal person. I'm a team player. This felt awful, but I went along with it. Ugh. The funny thing is, this band leader who felt so sort of in charge of everything, and he was the wise one who knew how it should be, and blah blah blah. Everyone else complained about him behind his back. That is another red flag. If people are complaining behind the band leader's back or anybody else's back, if every time someone leaves the room, other people are complaining about that person, that is a toxic band environment. Another thing that was a big red flag for me, and it really didn't work for me, and I did eventually speak up about it, but it didn't go well. But that was micromanaging. The drummer, who was also the band leader, was constantly micromanaging me for the first many gigs, handful of gigs. This is more common when you're female. It's just that I'm going to say it, that's the way it is. In our culture, it's way more common for a man to micromanage a woman than to micromanage another man. It's so common that women allow themselves to be micromanaged. Don't do that. Don't let yourself be micromanaged. I don't care if you're male or female. Don't let yourself be micromanaged. Every artist has different strengths and weaknesses that they bring to a project. And even if what you do doesn't look exactly like what your drummer thinks you should be doing, what you do will be good. You have to be yourself, and you have to figure out what your contribution to a project is. The drummer was constantly shouting stuff at me on stage during the gig that he wanted me to say into the microphone. No, that's not okay. I'm not okay with that. So I did eventually say something to him. I said something twice, and it wasn't super direct because he wasn't an easy guy to be direct with. The first time I just interrupted and said, I got it. And the second time I said, I think we should get you a mic. Well, he didn't like that. I don't care. Don't micromanage me. Now, as this project went on, it was clear to me that the goals that I was sold in the initial phone call were not even being attempted to be reached. I think that was a sentence. Instead of doing things to try to become a country club band, instead of adding songs that would be appropriate in a country club band, I was still singing Bruce Springsteen songs and Doobie Brothers songs. And then they asked me if there was a rock song that I wanted to add. A rock song? No, I want to be a country club band. I don't want to add a rock song. Why are you asking me this? And then new venues were being added, new gigs were being added. Great, except they were just more crappy bar gigs. And I'm not saying that the bars were crappy. I'm saying those gigs in my mind are crappy. If you want to do bar gigs, cool, do it. I did those when I was younger. They were fun. As long as I could have some dinner and a drink and still have extra cash afterwards, I was happy. But I'm 49. I don't want to do 4-hour bar gigs for $100 anymore. It's not what I want to do. There are tiki huts down here because we're in Southwest Florida. There are no walls, and it's freaking hot. I don't want to do those gigs. That is not why I joined this band. And yet that is all that was being reached for. So that is a red flag that you should definitely pay attention to. And I did pay attention to it. I mean, I only stuck with this band for 4 months, but I still feel like that was like 3 months too long. But anyway, make sure that the goals that you joined the band for are being at least attempted. Don't ever feel like, well, I'm already here and it would upset them and it would be really hard for them if I left. But no, this is your project. You have goals. Don't let anybody sidetrack you from your goals. Ultimately, what all this comes down to is a lack of professional communication, right? You don't talk behind people's backs if it's safe to talk to their faces, right? So I finally made the decision that this band wasn't going the direction I wanted to go. I wasn't really super happy with, all these little things that I've been talking about. And I told one of the band members that I didn't think it was working for me, but I would stick around and keep gigging while you guys looked for someone else, that kind of thing. But then I requested that we have a band meeting because the only opinion you ever heard in this band was the band leader, because nobody else, unless it was behind his back, nobody else really spoke up and said, hey, maybe we should do this. So I decided to have a band meeting because if the other band members really wanted to go the direction that I wanted to go, then maybe the whole project could be salvaged. That's what I was thinking. So I requested a band meeting and we scheduled it. Meanwhile, at that gig where I made this request, the last gig I did with them, one of my bandmates who I've become friends with said to me, Judy, I just want you to know that Paul is never going to be happy with any singer. I said his name, I was trying not to. But anyway, the band leader's never going to be happy with any singer. And I was like, what are you saying? And he said, that's it. I just, I like you and I want you to know that he's never going to be happy with any singer. So, So I went home and I got on Craigslist and check it out. There was an ad for another singer behind my back. This is what happens, right? You start a relationship as the other woman, and then eventually you risk your relationship ending because of another other woman. The band leader was behind it, but again, other people in the band would go along with what he did. It basically went like this. Paul would serve up poison, and everyone else in the band would be like, I don't want to drink the poison, but Paul wants me to drink the poison, so I guess I'll drink the poison. But here's the thing. Sounds like I'm ragging on my bandmates, and I guess I kind of am. But I did it a little too. Anything can be made to seem normal, but it's not normal. Needless to say, I did not continue to gig with them until I found someone else, because I don't do one-way loyalty. And I left the band. So the moral of this story, listen to your gut, pay attention to red flags, and never be afraid to say, this isn't the right project for me. Let's figure out how we can separate and move on and find the right bandmates for ourselves. All right? Don't ever sacrifice your musical goals for someone else because you don't want to make them upset. Do what's right for you. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time.